My name is Shane Albritton, and Norman Lee and I would like to thank the City of Fort Wayne, the Art Committee, Designing Local, and MetaLab for the collaboration that made this project possible. We're honored to be able to contribute to such a significant public memorial for the City of Fort Wayne and also for the enduring legacy of Dr. King. As artists, we draw on a site's cultural landscape to generate narrative concepts that resonate with local meanings. Our work is mostly about making connections between themes that are not typically seen as related, but actually have deep resonances that converge in a site-specific context. As storytellers, we have a combined 40 years telling stories that are not ours, but acting as a sort of conduit to create public work and memorials that champion a recontextualizing of history through the lens of contemporary art. And while we don't subscribe to a specific style of work, we let that story dictate where the expression goes and what materiality and techniques will be used. And so I'm happy to share with you our thought process and influence for the public monument Pillars of Hope and Justice. Pillars of Hope and Justice commemorates the historic visit of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to Fort Wayne in June 1963, where he shared his vision of nonviolent resistance along his journey leading up to the I Have a Dream speech. The memorial resonates on multiple levels with Dr. King's vision, bringing together ancient and contemporary philosophies. In addition to using Christian ethics in his writings and speeches, he was also heavily influenced by Eastern spiritual traditions and the ancient Greek notion of agape. In essence, agape love is not romantic love, but goodwill, benevolence, and a willful delight in the object of love. We were deeply inspired by King's 6 pillars of nonviolent resistance and the ancient Greek notion of agape, as it advocates for a set of moral, spiritual, and civic responsibilities that strengthen our humanity. In his 1958 essay, An Experiment of Love, he considers how these basic tenets can be used in guiding any successful movement of nonviolent resistance. The pillars, as he laid out, are: nonviolence is a way of life for courageous people. Nonviolence seeks to win friendship and understanding. Nonviolence seeks to defeat injustice, not people. Nonviolence holds that suffering can educate and transform. Nonviolence chooses love instead of hate. Nonviolence believes that the universe is on the side of justice. This contemporary sculpture gestures toward the ancient tradition of pillars carved in the form of papyrus reeds, originating 4,000 years ago in Egypt. For Dr. King, the 6 pillars of nonviolent resistance were defined in opposition to the values of Egypt, as told in the Exodus story. In the Hebrew and Christian scriptures, reeds are a metaphor of both authority and vulnerability, the tension at the heart of Dr. King's vision of social change. As he told Fort Wayne 60 years ago, nonviolence should not be dismissed as a weak method. It works on the conscience. It enables us to stand before our most bitter opponents and meet their physical force with soul force. The reed also resonates with the powerful tradition of Black preaching on the new Exodus, drawing on the prophet Isaiah. In the book of Isaiah, the reed is a metaphor for liberating leadership driven by compassion. This book was deeply meaningful to Dr. King and many other Fort Wayne faith leaders, including his mentor, Reverend Pius Barber, and fellow National Baptist minister, Reverend Clyde Adams. The organic form of the reeds honors Dr. King's relationships with the clergy who worked for civil rights in Fort Wayne, as well as the Protestant, Catholic, Jewish, and secular civic leaders who hosted the event. The papyrus reed was one of the first methods humanity used to record the spoken word, starting in 3000 BC. The papyrus paper as a mode of mass communication or a canvas for authors to write on, and allowed easy transportation of knowledge to be stored in libraries, just as this memorial serves to preserve this historic speech for future generations. The organic design form speaks also to grassroots democracy in Indiana and the service of all local civic leaders who sowed seeds for Dr. King's visit. His vision of nonviolent revolution was never about his own leadership, but about inspiring the leaders who carried on his legacy after the March on Washington and his assassination in 1968. The 6 pillars of nonviolent resistance must be continually taught and passed down across the generations. Visually, the corn harvest in Indiana is comparable to that of papyrus bundles, but imbued with local meaning. It is also a symbol of prosperity. Located on the corner of Main and Ewing, 1 block from the USF Performing Arts Center, the monument features 6 pillars set in a circular configuration around a stone concrete plaza. Each pillar evokes both ancient architectural pillars and growing reeds of papyrus that emerge from the ground and bend outwards at the top. The forms reaching toward each other create a cathedral-like space that gesture upwards, trumpeting a message of hope. Landscaping, benches, and an arched pathway all frame the monument and provide a barrier from the urban landscape to create a more contemplative gathering space. The sweeping arch pathway gives more poetic approaches to the plaza, providing opportunities to view the sculptures from various angles and sightlines. On closer approach, you will discover that the sculptural steel forms are created from the words from Dr. King's speech in Fort Wayne. The words arc over visitors, evoking King's statement, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." At the center of the circular plaza is interpretive text that details Dr. King's appearance in Fort Wayne and his speech at Scottish Rite Auditorium on June 5th, 1963. There will be an interpretive sign near the arched pathway entrance describing this in more detail with supporting historical images. When viewed from afar, the arched gestures echo the lambrequin arches of the nearby USF Performing Arts Center, creating a dialogue with the building, like doorways inviting you in. Within each pillar is a light that illuminates the structures at night, creating 6 glowing beacons with Dr. King's words becoming backlit. An important part of our practice is often community engagement, and in gathering input from different groups within a community, we discover that many of the perspectives are dramatically different, which is not surprising. But when the perspectives intersect, they intersect in very unexpected and interesting ways, often becoming an inspirational springboard for a site-specific project. Every project we do requires a different level or type of engagement, depending on the story we're telling. These are a few excerpts that represent a partial reconstruction of the speech delivered by Dr. King, as no complete version of this address exists. And so in an effort to choose which excerpts to incorporate into the pillars, we worked with the city and Designing Local to establish an online survey that enabled residents to vote on which sentiments resonated with them the most. The objective is to take the highest ranking sentiments and position them facing inward so that a person visiting the memorial can stand in the center of the space surrounded by Dr. King's historical words as prioritized by the residents of Fort Wayne today, thereby connecting past and present.